Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Wise, Witty and Weird. Glad you could be with me today for another one of our ripping productions that have you all wondering whether or not we're wise, witty or just plain weird. Often not very wise, not very witty. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Four Corners program here in Australia that was run yesterday. And one of the things I want to say about it is that it was a really nice production, and that it had, excuse me while I blow my nose, it had one of the most fearsome interviewers you can imagine, Sarah Ferguson. I can tell you right now, I would dread that day where I'm facing off against Sarah Ferguson in an interview. It would be horrific. However, Sarah, with her mate Tony, is in the United States putting out some interesting pieces in relation to what's happening in the US politically. So, and they decided on this occasion to have a go at Fox News. Now, I think it's fabulous when anybody decides to have a shot at the most prolific purveyor of misinformation in the world. I think that is fabulous. 10 out of 10 for doing it. You deserve a particular award for just having the courage to face off against Murdock and his hounds. And I was waiting to see what sort of response the Murdock Press would give, and it didn't surprise me last night when I was checking through what news items were going to surface today. The front page of the Australian Murdock Press came up with their response. Now, I've been following what's happening in relation to the media in the US for years. I watch a lot of MSNBC, I watch a lot of CNN, so I'll declare not my allegiances, but the places in which I tend to seek news. I watch PBS, the PBS Hour. I watch a range of stuff, and I have snippets of Hannity and Tucker Carlson and whatever, and about 3 or 4 other right-wing opinion writers that they tend to put on after dark when the majority of their viewers are suffering from insomnia and are not able to therefore relax in any way, so they want to be stirred up by these morons. And it interests me that there are a number of people within Fox who genuinely endeavour to produce some form of newsworthy piece that is not biased or not shaped in any particular way to fit a particular narrative. And I just want to say that I do believe strongly, without doubt, I've never met Mr. Murdock or any of his sons, regrettably, because I would like to have had the opportunity to have a chat to them, but that hasn't come my way, probably because I'm nobody, no one of real significance, and I kind of get that given the number of actual subscribers we have to this channel. But I would like to thank my relatives for subscribing. I really do appreciate that. But it's become so, the way Fox has developed and the way Murdoch has decided to expand his empire, it has always been clear to me that the purpose was to influence politics. Well, that was one of them. The other one's to make money. So you find that niche in the market that is crying out for the sort of crap that you need to spew in order for them to be enticed to continually watch you, and therefore have advertisers come on board who are interested in reaching that particular section of the community. And so I think, to their credit, and to Roger Ailes' credit, I guess, they've been very successful at that. They chose a portion of the media, portion of the population that they could entice into their web of conspiracy theories and a whole host of other shit that they thought was relevant. And they have been good at it. right? So you've got to give credit where credit's due. It was a portion of the market that kind of had been ignored. I guess Fox had part of it. I guess it's AON and First Network, whatever they are, First America, whatever they are. They had a very small portion of it. But Fox primarily had it all. And then along comes Donald Trump. Now, Trump, I believe, represented to Murdoch in particular, an opportunity to consolidate that base that AOS had started some 16 years before. And he knew that if he could capture that market, that they would get a stranglehold on the right-wing media. And so there is no doubt in my mind that Murdoch used Trump in order to capture that market. Now, I know Murdoch is right-wing. There's no disputing any of that. The possibility that he's completely amoral is probably pretty sound, I think, when it comes to making a buck. He knows how to do that. And he chose, as a result, to look at Fox as a way to capture the largest market actually in the world in terms of cable television. And he was able to do that. They went from basic obscurity, I guess, because, well, they weren't there at one point, but they went from that and they rode that wave until finally Trump comes in, and then they exploded. And they hired the likes of Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity in order to be able to, and also Bill O'Reilly at the beginning until he got dismissed for sexual abuse, a la Roger Ailes, which says a little bit about their culture. It makes you wonder why that was never addressed at the outset. But they allowed that to persist for as long as they could until it became disclosed. And so it was a shitty network, basically. It was pretty crappy. There were some decent people in it. There's no disputing that, not having a go at them. I'm sure they thought they were doing the right thing. But at the end of the day, they were also used in order to make it appear that the news they're offering is fair and balanced, and that the opinion pieces then at the end of the evening could basically say whatever they want to say. And it was those people that the elder part of the community, their community, watch. Now, it was fair for Four Corners to analyse exactly the way that shaped up. And they interviewed a number of people who had intimate knowledge of what happened within Fox News. And it's a fair assumption to say that it was used as a means by which Murdoch could have the power and influence that he desires over politics. We also know that's from Britain. We know that Sky News in Britain had the same sort of endeavour, and that they were successful, particularly Tony Blair era, I believe, to have an influence over what happened politically within the UK. In Australia, we have Sky News as well, regretfully, who do the same sort of thing. And it's interesting that when you see this right across these continents, and you discover that Sky News here in Australia has not to the, well, are they to the same extreme? I think they are. They're, so, you know, they haven't got Craig Kelly on yet, but it's likely. Stand back. Clive Palmer, if it doesn't work out with his party, I'm sure Craig will probably find a spot next to Alan Jones on Sky News, because this is the way they roll. Because they're not interested in what is in the best interest of the community. They're not even interested in the truth. That part of the media, and I'll just separate it, that the nighttime, after dark part of the media with Fox and Sky is not interested in news. They are interested in spreading propaganda. And I've got a video which I'll be showing in another segment later on, Wise, Witty and Weird, in relation to something that came out yesterday in relation to that. But just at the moment, I wanted to talk about this particular issue. Now, I watched for a headline to come out yesterday in relation to Murdock Press coming out and having a go at Four Corners, because I don't think they couldn't let it go, no matter what. They had to try and find a way to discredit Four Corners, because you can't let a non-commercial network, which is funded by Australians, to get away with having a shot at a commercial network that is also funded by Australians, because they pay for Sky News and whatever, and so on. So could they let it get away with it? No, they couldn't. So this is what they did. So I'll try and read some of this out to you. The two-part Four Corners series and accompanying reports on radio and online includes interviews with several disgruntled former employees of Fox News. So if you've left Fox News because you've been fired, I guess you would be disgruntled if the firing was unjust, right? And Greta, whose name I just forgotten, she was disgruntled because she left Fox News because Roger Ailes sexually assaulted her. Okay, reasonable reason to be disgruntled. And the political advisor, he left Fox News because they were disappointed with him because he didn't declare one of the states in the US to Trump when Biden won it. And so he was asked to leave because he didn't do the right thing. Okay, they're disgruntled. I get that. But because a person is disgruntled doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to talk about you in ways that they shouldn't be. Because Greta, she actually couldn't talk about the reasons why she received a payout, because there was an NDA signed. And so she just couldn't talk about that. I'm sure she would have loved to, but she couldn't. And then the other bloke, he was quite, I thought he was quite sound in his assessment as to what happened during Fox News, and how when it came to the election, the sort of type of way they made their calling in relation to who won that election. And he was quite a reasonable individual and may have been disgruntled because he lost his position, and maybe he lost some income as a result of that. Who knows what happened afterwards. But the questions that Sarah asked them were reasonable. And there was one time where the political bloke said, I just can't answer that. I can't go down that path for whatever reason. So it wasn't an unreasonable interview session. Sarah's pretty attacking, but it wasn't. So several disgruntled former employees of Fox News in an attempt to smear the Murdoch-controlled broadcaster with a baseless claim that it had, in quotes, role in amplifying Trump's lies that the election was stolen from him. There is no doubt that Fox saw this as an opportunity to perpetuate a lie that their base, Fox's base, liked. And this kept Fox's viewers watching them. And when they amplified all of that through Hannity and Tucker Carlson and others, it gave the lie greater emphasis. It gave it a sense of momentum that it would never have had otherwise. And then there were issues around hydroxychloroquine and injecting stuff into your body that Trump talked about. And then these people on Fox News get up and they start to talk about it, as they did on Sky News here in Australia. And it's so across the board they propagate these lies that fit with the stupidity that sits within this base that follow them. And that if you've got a base like that continually watch you and pay for your advertisers and all that sort of shit, then you've got to keep going. You can't stop. And if you can influence enough people in order to make decisions that are political decisions, that is, so it is without doubt Murdoch wants the Republicans back in power, because it's through them that he gains control. There's some interesting comment about monopolies. He doesn't like monopolies, like bullshit. there's one thing that Murdoch wants is a monopoly. He wants total control over friggin' everything, and when he can't get it, and when Four Corners decide to kick him in the teeth over it, he kicks up a fuss. He's like a spoilt little child. Doesn't get his own way, so he has a tantrum. And they go on to say, Four Corners also made much of Fox News host Sean Hannity's impromptu appearance with Trump. Now, they argue here that that they failed to note that the network censured the on-air staff for his decision to appear on stage with the president. How did they censure him? Like, what was the censure? Did they say, naughty boy, you shouldn't have done that? Why wouldn't they have told him that beforehand? Why wouldn't he have known that it was a rule, it was a matter of appropriate behaviour that you as a Fox host... They knew Trump would call Hannity on his show all the time. Trump would call all the people within. He didn't call MSNBC or CNN or whatever. He gave up on them because they weren't the base that he wanted. And besides, they gave him a hard time. But these other people, like Hannity and Carlson, they gave him an easy time, an easy ride. And at the end, that ride, which was agreed to by the network, pushed him into power in 2016. No doubt about it. And attempted to keep him in there for the next 4 years until he got booted out. They just did. The ABC argued that Fox and Mr. Trump were on a unity ticket, but failed to mention the 400 plus tweets by the then president in which he heavily criticised Fox News coverage. Now, I find this bit interesting. So Trump criticises the November election. We're talking about a 5-6 year period prior to all of that, where Trump was the golden boy for Fox News. Now they're picking out a period in 2020 when he lost the election, and Trump was upset because Fox News had called Wisconsin and a whole lot of other states for Biden. And he believed they shouldn't have because the election was stolen, all that sort of shit. And but here they say 400 plus tweets by then president. He was tweeting like crazy anyway. I'd suggest 400 tweets is just the minimal amount of tweets he probably sent out in that period. And he was criticising Fox News from the moment they declared him the loser. Prior to that, Fox News were the greatest people on earth. They were the best network, the best everything. Because they kowtowed to Trump. So I guess the issue is that, and one of the other issues I think was that they say here that ABC's contention was that Fox News set the scene for the January 6th riot. In August, the high-profile Fox News presenters who repeatedly blasted Mr. Trump's. Oh, that's right. And they talked here about Chris Wallace. Now, there are a couple of presenters on Fox that were not sucking up to him, no matter what he did. Breyer was one, and certainly Chris Wallace was the other, because Chris Wallace is a genuine reporter. And so they pick out those two, or that one, Chris Wallace, and then on the other side, you've got all these other morons who were spouting this other shit that the election was stolen and that you should inject yourself and use light rays inside the body and a lot of the other crap that Trump was carrying on about. They were supporting all of that. And but there were some that stood up against it. No one's disputing that. And I don't think they needed to mention it because it wasn't an important part of the article, the piece that Four Corners put together. The Four Corners piece was about Murdoch's influence and control and his desire to set up a media network that could influence and control elections. That was it. And he did. So who's going to argue with that? Well, Murdoch will, because he has the media outlets to do it. So, what does all of this mean? It means that Murdock Press is right-wing, that they will do whatever they can do to control the narrative, and they will make the narrative as toxic and as destructive and as dishonest as they can, because that's what they do. And we need to accept that, understand it, and be critical. There are sometimes I found myself watching even Alan Jones once and thinking, yeah, I agree with what he'd said, right? There's some stuff there I didn't agree with, but there was some stuff I agreed with. I was surprised. I surprised myself. But there are things that we need to make a stand against, without a doubt. And that we need to be aware that an organisation like Fox, Sky and the media press in general is not out to inform us. They are out to influence us. And we need to be aware we need to be able to separate fact from fiction. I had someone on one of my sent me a message on a news item that wasn't hard to check whether it was fact or fiction, and the person who was quoted in the news article had a Twitter post that said it was completely untrue what the news article said. And so sometimes, when bizarre things are stated, check them out, get the facts, because Fox News, Sky News and the Murdock Press do not present you always with the facts. I'm not saying they don't ever present you with the facts, because clearly they do. But be wary. Buyer beware. Thanks everybody for watching on Wise, Witty and Weird. I just want to remind you though, and I keep forgetting this, just subscribe. If you like what we have to say, ring the bell if you want some more information. We'll try and do as many of these as I can, and we'd like to get our numbers up so we can get some monetization for all of this. So thanks everybody for being part of this. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.